Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We have one more panel here set up this afternoon, and we're going to talk about what we learned from the breakout sessions, from the brainstorming sessions that we had at lunch. Lots of ideas, almost 900 people here with great ideas about what can happen in the future with this program. I'm going to introduce my colleagues and ask them to come and join me in order to save time, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about other kinds of grand challenges. So first, I'd like to introduce Tom Katsouleas, who is the Provost and Executive Vice President at the University of Virginia. You might remember him from yesterday. And Jenna Carpenter, who is the founding Dean of Engineering at Campbell University, and she's also the Chair of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program Steering Committee. And Yannis Yortsos, who is the Dean of Engineering at the Viterbi School of Engineering at USC, and he's also a counselor here at the NAE. So please, why don't you all have a seat for a second. We have the most fun job because it's reading all of the ideas that everyone put out for us about what we could do in the future. But as we begin to do that, I'd like to share with you a little bit of background about the whole concept of grand challenges and what's happening on the landscape going around the world. So first of all, in chronological order, at least approximate chronological order, the Millennium Project for Global Challenges for Humanity came out in 1999. And then I'm just going to read through a number of other Grand Challenge programs around the planet. There's also the Gates Foundation Grand Challenges in Global Health in 2003, the Clinton Global Initiative in 2005, the National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenges in Engineering for the 21st Century in 2008. But this has been followed by the USAID Grand Challenges for Development in 2011, the TED Med Great Challenges in 2012, the Obama White House 21st Century Grand Challenges in 2013, the World Climate Research Program Grand Challenges in 2013, the UN Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, the National Academy of Medicine Grand Challenges in Health and Medicine in 2016. There's a number of challenges out there. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that the grand challenges in engineering are different in several ways. So one of those ways is that what engineers do create technologies that have enormous impact on society. These spread in ways which have changed life. You heard about this yesterday. The lifespan of people on this planet changed substantially from the year 1900 to the year 2000, largely as a result of the technologies that were created. So that's one of the responsibilities that we have. Another differentiator that the Engineering Grand Challenges has, I believe we're the only Grand Challenge program on the planet that has a very vibrant and growing student program that's spreading across the world. This is an opportunity to engage the next generation in dealing with these problems on a very large scale, and we're the only one in the game. And the third piece of this, which I think came out in a lot of the Q&A that we heard earlier in this meeting, is that all engineering societies have a code of ethics. And the number one responsibility of everyone who's an engineer is to protect the public health and welfare. That shows up ahead of maximizing the profit for the company in each quarter. That's not true of all of the other disciplines. So that's one thing that we as engineers need to be proud of and we need to constantly be cognizant of. Okay, with that as an introduction, I'd like to ask Tom Katsouleas to help guide us through what we heard from you at lunch.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Well, I'd like to start by thanking all of you for participating in the brainstorming session outside in the tent today. Wasn't it fun to brainstorm with mixed groups of students and professionals?
Hey.
So I was really proud of the professionals at my table because they managed to keep up with the students really well. So Yannis and Rick and Jenna and I have gone quickly through your table's answers to the brainstorming question. And our hope was that the session itself would stimulate and motivate those attending to be champions that will spread the Grand Challenges as a global movement. So the question was asking you, and hopefully we'll have it on a slide behind me here, what could you and your constituency do to further the Grand Challenges as a movement locally and or globally? So this is the top 10 ideas. And next slide. Number 10 actually is number 11. In the spirit of the Grand Challenges, we heard yesterday that they were initially planning to have 10 Grand Challenges and ended up with 14. We were initially planning to have 10 ideas and ended up with 11. So number 11, develop MOOCs, TED Talks, simulation games around the Grand Challenges. I think a great idea. Okay. Number 10, engage professional organizations, professional societies, and so on. Number 9, include more countries. Makes sense? Okay. We got 3 here. Something we can talk about in the next session. Number 8, use the Grand Challenges in promoting diversity. We know they're an effective hook. Let's use it. Okay, good idea. Number 7, engage corporate leaders in support of the Grand Challenges. I think both in terms of supporting meetings like this and supporting our students, but also in incorporating the Grand Challenges themes into their corporate mission statements. Number 6, include ethics in the 5 components of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. Number 5, incorporate Grand Challenges into our educational curriculum and the framing of our educational curriculum. These are great ideas, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Number 4, develop a comprehensive media platform to reach the public and communities. And I think there were some ideas for sort of presentation in a box and things like that that could travel around and be used to promote the Grand Challenges with local government. Number 3, use the Grand Challenges to change your conversations about what engineering is. We like this because the question was, what can you do, not a list of what other people can do. And we can all do this in our conversations about what is engineering about. What kind of engineer are you, Rick? Are you a civil engineer, or are you the kind of engineer who makes the world more healthful, secure, joyful, and sustainable? Number 2, start a Grand Challenge scholarship program at your school. This was incredibly popular and very gratifying to this group to hear that was the number 2 thing. So we should all applaud them for this. Thank you for making this number 2. And are you ready for the number 1 idea? Be ambassadors. Share what you learned here about the movement with students and colleagues when you go back. That's it. Mm-hmm. If everyone were to do that, this Global Grand Challenge Summit would be unequivocally a success. Mm-hmm. So I think you did a marvelous job in capturing some really great ideas, and our charge to you is to take them back with you and implement them. So let's give yourselves a big hand.
There's actually a lot of information that we gathered, as you might guess. With almost 900 people here, we have a lot of cards back there with a lot of data, and this is what we could do in about 30 minutes while everyone else was in the last session. So you'll see more. This will be gathered and put together by the NAE after the meeting and be available to read. Because well, number 1, the first thing that came out, which I think we all read in spades from you, was more publicity. We need to find a way to get the word out, to engage the public, to tell people who aren't here in this room what happened here, the kinds of discussions that went on and how important they are. I think the best way to do that is by being an ambassador on your own at this point. But the energy that we saw in the recommendations told me that you're very excited about this topic and that you're very excited about what you learned here today and would like to share it with others. That's really important. But the number 2 thing was how to start your own Grand Challenge Scholars Program, which I think is really exciting. And that's why I think Jenna could be particularly helpful in telling us, if you're in that situation, what should you do?
That's a great question, Rick. So one thing I can tell you to do, go to the Grand Challenge Scholars Program website. If you just Google Grand Challenge Scholars Program, you can find the link. If you go on the left, there's a link that says Becoming a Member. Under that, it says Join the GCSP. So we've got step-by-step instructions that walk you exactly through how to create a program. Let me just kind of summarize some of that, if I may. So you need to put together a group of people at your institutions, involve some students, some faculty, administrators. You need to create an operational document, and we have a template on our website, and it just is a series of questions. And in answering those questions, you will come up with the pieces of the program that you have to have. Once you've got that, if you will email it to us, we will review that, kind of provide you with some feedback, tips on some best practices, and then it'll be approved and you'll be on your way.
That's very good.
Sounds easy.
So how can they get a hold of you after the meeting? On the website?
I'm sorry, on the website? Yeah.
Yes.
So my email's on there. Really would encourage you to reach out to me, and if you're thinking about creating a program, contact us. We'll pair you with a mentor from our steering committee, and that's also a great, great tip. That gives you some guidance, some place to ask questions, and some things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. You know, the Grand Challenge Scholars Program is not that old and has grown really fast, as you've heard from other people before. The National Academy, in response to the demand that we've seen around the country, has stepped up to the plate and provided permanent support for the institution. So Ramakrishnan is a permanent staff here at the NAE who's been very influential in getting this meeting together, and he's available to you if you have suggestions and ideas about how the NAE could be even more supportive. I just wanted to point that out. And the position that he has is the result of philanthropic support from many of the sponsors that are here at the meeting. So I want to thank the Academy and thank the sponsors for making this a permanent aspect of what it means at the Academy. And as we look forward, yes, let's, thank you. As we look forward in the months ahead, this is an opportunity, possibly an inflection point in the history of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. And I think that no one here has spent more time thinking about what the future of the Grand Challenges could be as a student program than Dean Yortsos. So I'd like to ask you, Yannis, if you would tell us a little bit about what you think might happen with this program.
Sure, thanks, Rick. First of all, it's a great pleasure to see all of you here. I remember in 2009 when we were sort of concluding the summit there, the national summit, the first such national summit actually at Duke University. Yes. And it was pretty much an audience like this. And we were looking at the future. 2009 was the time when there was a big recession in this country. And Grand Challenges actually came in as a wonderful, uplifting message of what engineers can do to change that part of the world at that time. And of course, you know, 8 years later, we are in a very different situation, much more growth of the movement. When we started in 2009, there were 3 deans, Tom, well, Rick was a president, he was not a dean. I was a dean, so Tom was upgraded to business class, so he's a provost now. I still remain a dean, so that's fine with me. I am not asking for any offers to go anywhere else, just let you know that. I love what I do. And the program started slowly at the beginning, but then took fire. I think we have now more than 40, maybe 50 schools with programs, active programs. More than 120 schools have committed to start a program. And so this is a program that is growing very fast. It's an example of how a network of institutions forms and how it grows. We've seen this example in the diversity initiative that we started with the American Society of Engineering Education on how to create pledges from various universities to participate and improve diversity in their schools. And I didn't have the opportunity to talk at the presentation before lunch, but in the United States, more than 200 engineering schools have committed to change the diversity and increase the diversity in their institutions. This is a wonderful, I would say, a unique historical feat that has happened in this country. And I'm very optimistic about the increase of diversity in engineering pipeline. I think we can do tremendous things and change the conversation significantly. I look at the global, the Grand Challenges for Engineering program, the Grand Challenges Scholars Program, as the fundamental tool by which we change the conversation about engineering. It is a phenomenal tool for us. I have seen it firsthand as a dean of an engineering school, how it changes the idea about what engineering is. When I talk to prospective students, parents, K through 12 entities outside the university, when they understand that engineering is not about a device or an algorithm or a differential equation, but it is about changing and solving an important societal problem, it changes dramatically what people think about engineering and how we can bring engineering in, become engineers. Technology is empowering to a tremendous, in a tremendous way nowadays our world. The reason we have Grand Challenges is because technology has increased so much. And therefore, we now, problems that in the past were not within reach, now have become within reach. So this is really the idea behind all this. And so we would like to use this vehicle to actually change the conversation, make engineering students have a different mindset about what engineering is. And that's really what it's all about. The 5 competencies of the Grand Challenge program is about a different mindset about what engineering is. It's a wonderful mindset. It's a mindset that we want to propagate as much as possible, and it's a mindset that attracts to engineering diverse groups, including women and underrepresented minorities. So the goal that we have is to expand. We're going to expand in all dimensions, K through 12, to make sure we influence that pipeline. Community colleges, that's an important part of the pipeline to feed many engineering schools, as well as expanding globally. And I don't want to use the word expansion. I want to use the word nurturing and encouraging the development of systems of the same type in other countries in the world. Different countries have different ways by which they do things. I think we have to respect and be aware of the differences in the different systems that exist. At the same time, we believe that this change in mindset is so powerful, and I think should spread across the world. The partnership with the National Academy, which provides the services of the new network director, Dr. Ramakrishna, is a very important component to it. In my experience, as you create networks of units that are of interest and they help each other, these networks have to be frictionless so that people can get into it. They have to add value to the corresponding institutions. But most importantly, they have to be curated. So I think this is an important part to have a director. But most importantly, they have to have the auspices and the endorsement of some institution that is much above the individual institutions. We've seen this in the diversity initiative when the White House endorsed it, and that helped it grow. And we see the same thing with this initiative because the NAE has endorsed it and it will help us grow. So we're very optimistic about the future. We're creating a 2.0 version of the Grand Challenges Scholars Program, which will distribute to you and to interested parties pretty soon. And we will take into consideration, of course, all these new ideas that came up from this brainstorming session. So I am very optimistic about the program. I think engineering, I feel that I am very engineering-centric, of course, being an engineering dean. And I think that we can be change agents in a very significant way, and the students are going to do that.
Very good. Great. Tom?
I couldn't agree more on the future of the Grand Challenges is bright with leadership like Yannis in place. I'd like to reflect a little bit on this meeting and where I think the Grand Challenges movement beyond just the Scholars Program is going. You know, I was really still reflecting on a comment that Rajiv Shah made yesterday, and I frame it this way: Can Bono take the place of Obama as the public leader for the Grand Challenges movement, or the public champion? And that's really quite intriguing. And then he went on to say that it takes a lot of time to partner with the UN, but it's worth it. And so I'm wondering whether the UN can fill the void in political leadership by the time of the next summit. The other thing I'm going to reflect on is one of the suggestions that came up here as number 4, is include more countries. And I'd really like to see us at the next global summit, as we keep our 3 primary organizing countries, but we could still include more countries as speakers and as attendees. And I think that's a way we can really grow the movement, which is what we're trying to do. And finally, I'd just like to ask whether Martha Lane Fox could run for the US legislature. I don't know. I thought she was just absolutely fantastic. But you know, she's in the House of Lords, and I asked her backstage if she would be interested in making a switch to the House of Good Lords. Sorry. But it really was inspiring to see that there's that kind of engineering expertise and leadership, thought leadership in government, and what a great example for us all. So, to you.
Perfect. Well, I want to point out a couple of things and try to provide some framing for where we go from here. First of all, we just finished a couple of months ago the commencement season at universities all across the country. And as we watch students walk across the stage, one of the things stands out as you look at the data. Only about 5% of the bachelor's degrees awarded in America to students who graduated at the bachelor's level, only about 5% went to students who majored in any kind of engineering at any university in the US. And that compares with about 12% in Europe and about 30% in Asia. If we're going to attack and succeed at winning against these grand challenges, we're going to need more people. We're going to need the best and the brightest young people in America to commit, and across the entire world. Another thing that you find out in the US, about half of the students who enroll in engineering as first-year students in the fall will not complete the program in engineering. Now, many of them will graduate in something else, but they won't graduate in engineering. And a good fraction of those who leave engineering have higher grades than the ones who stayed. They're not flunking out, they're opting out. This is a solvable problem. I would say it qualifies as a grand challenge. In fact, you could say that education of the next generation to deal with these grand challenges is itself the overarching challenge that we need to face now from the manpower point of view. I actually prepared a couple of slides, which maybe we could get up on the screen here to start, to help you think of two images to keep in your mind as you leave. There we go. So maybe the clicker will work and I can talk from here for just a second. This is a graph of world population growth over all of human history. It actually, you have to look twice. You think it's just the axis that was drawn in red. It's a hockey stick, okay? It's essentially less than 1 billion until you get to the year almost 1900. You see there's a little tiny blip with a vertical text there that identifies the Black Death, the bubonic plague in Europe. There's a little tiny blip, and then it takes off like a rocket ship after that. I point that out because during the bubonic plague, Isaac Newton was at home on the ranch inventing the calculus. This is about the time that universities as we know them were invented. The idea of academic disciplines, of college degrees, and looking backwards in the history of what they had seen, that was the way the disciplines were created. But if you look at forward to the world that we're looking at today, I believe that no aspect of human life on the planet will escape being affected by that graph. What we saw about the growth of cities and urbanization, what we saw about the growth of climate change is all a consequence of this. Which means, from an engineering point of view, if there were a way to sort of reduce the incentive to grow the population at that rate, we might be able to cut down on the supply side of the problem rather than just worrying about how to react to it once it's here. That has an interesting set of consequences. By the way, the National Geographic Society published some results recently about, for example, the birth rate in Brazil. Apparently in the 1960s, and this is my memory now, so I could be off a little bit on the digits, there were about 7 live births per woman in Brazil. But very recently, it's less than 2. And the most likely cause, or at least the most prominent among the causes, is education for women. And I think what we're doing with the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, which brings in about 50% women into the educational program, providing an educational mission which brings purpose and meaning, not just differential equations, can make a big difference in the supply side of the problem as well. This, by the way, there we go, is an existential threat. Population biologists have seen graphs like this before. This is what happens when the rabbits become out of control in the outback in Australia, and in 1 generation they're gone. So if we're going to do something about this, we need to learn to think differently, to cooperate across time zones, cooperate across disciplines, and to cooperate across political boundaries and work together to solve our problems. So that's one graph I'd like you to hold in your mind as you get on the plane to go home from here. This is the other one, which looks like a very messy photograph. You have to look very hard This is a photograph taken by the Voyager spacecraft in 1990, looking back at the planet Earth as the Voyager 1 left our solar system. This is the first time we saw this little pale blue dot, which is Earth, okay? That is the planet Earth. This provoked a prominent astronomer in the United States, a fellow named Carl Sagan, to write a commencement speech about what he saw in looking at this. And I think this is appropriate for our audience here today. He said, look again at that dot. That's here. That's home, that's us. On that dot, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, every hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that in the glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of the other corner, how frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. The Earth is the only known world so far to harbor life. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. I hope you'll remember that as you think about your studies when you go back to school. Thank you. We may have time for maybe one or two questions. We have about 2 minutes left, if anybody's still awake in the audience.
Or comments.
If not, why don't we let them get back to their rest? Well, maybe here's a question showing up.
So I want to follow up to the ambassadorship, okay? I know that was discussed also at our table. What can be done to provide maybe a couple of different formats of materials, collaterals, et cetera, that then could enable everyone who attended this to be equipped to now ambassador in their little space? And that could be something that is more student focused, could be something for me as a professional that I can take with into the workplace, something for academics coming within their department, their college, et cetera. And then also, I think we need to go the one step beyond, which is the rest of the space, dealing with family, right? Dealing with others who are not in the STEM community, so that we can go that one step beyond. Any thoughts or any preparation?
Well, we were reflecting the ideas we read in your list, and so that wasn't answered, but I think there's a hint at that in one of the other suggestions, which is to develop a multimedia sort of kit. And there was a suggestion of creating a kit that could even go on the road, sort of presentation in a box for local government officials. So you could combine those ideas. And I think it's something we could take back and especially with the NAE and RAMA, about creating some of those resources on the web that you could share. I think most of the ideas we saw in the suggestions were along the idea of word of mouth, to just come back and tell, if you're a student, come back and tell your fellow classmates simply, you know, I went to this event on the Grand Challenges, here's what they are, here's what's going on. Many of the students commented at my table that before they came here, they didn't know that much about the whole thing. So just sharing word of mouth that way, and the same thing with faculty and colleagues. But I hear your suggestion, and I think it's a good one.
And even if there's something small, similar to the short videos, right, the Dean was showing, that then now becomes something that generates hits, generates very good circulation, that has exponential impact with very little investment.
Great suggestion.
We're out of time, but let me just add that what we know about what changes minds and what incites people are stories. The human animal is wired to respond to human stories, particularly those that involve transformation. And the videos that are being prepared now as a result of the Save the World project that's currently underway with the students in this audience, there's 180 some students involved in it, will be available soon. These will be blogs. They'll be from 3 to 10 minutes long. They'll tell personal stories from students who are very excited. I will personally be looking to use those when I try to influence others. Thank you very much.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Okay.